Radio Escucha.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar organized by CDKN, the Climate and Development Knowledge Network. This webinar is about flooding and climate change in Jamaica, risk to vulnerable communities. And I want to first thank you for taking the time for joining us. My name is Maria Jose Pacha, and I am the Knowledge and Networks Manager for Latin American and the Caribbean for the Climate and Development Knowledge Network. So before we begin, I want to go over through some logistics and frequently asked questions. Today's presentation will be recorded and it will be uploaded in our YouTube channel CDKN Network. There are also two options for listening to this session. One is through plugging into your computer and the other via telephone that was provided in your registration message. If you experience audio difficulties in listening to this session, this is because you have too many browsers, windows, or software open, so feel free to close these. Questions are very welcome, so please write them in the questions section that you can find in the toolbar on your GoToWebinar screen. We will try to answer as many questions as possible in the time available. So all the questions will be answered at the end of the session. If you have any technical difficulties, please send a chat message to me and we will try to sort it out. We have some polls and surveys during and after the webinar, and they will help us to understand more your needs, so we would appreciate if you can answer them. So after this brief introduction, I will present our speaker for today's session. Is Dr. Arpita Mandal. She is a lecturer in the Department of Geography and Geology, University of West Indies in Jamaica. She has a PhD in geology with a specialization in hydrogeology and geochemistry, and she is a teacher in the undergraduate and postgraduate program. Her work aims to understand the impact of climate change on the water sector in the Caribbean islands. Dr. Mandal's current work focuses on national adaptation strategies for the water sector for the islands of Grenada, Antigua, and Barbuda, and ongoing work also involves the climate change and adaptation strategy for the agriculture section for Jamaica. Dr. Mandal's research has been published in academic journals as well as in consultancies both within and outside the Caribbean. But she doesn't work alone, and the work that she is presenting couldn't be possible without the following project partners. So before we hand it over to Dr. Mandal, I would like to ask you a very brief question about your background so we can understand more the public that we have at the moment. So we'd appreciate if you can answer this poll now. So we would like to know whether you're a researcher, a student, a government representative, a climate change professional, or an NGO representative. This would be very useful to adapt the message that we have. Okay, so from this poll, most of our listeners are from NGOs, 30% are climate change professionals, and the rest are government representative and students. So great, thank you very much for this. So with this, I will hand it over to our speaker.
Okay.
Yeah, the floor is yours, Arpita. You can start your presentation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you, CDKN and Maria, for allowing me to do this webinar and organizing this. So this was a project funded by CDKN, as Maria mentioned, and managed and organized, Carib Safe managed the project for me. It was funded by CDKN, and I had few partners who worked with me in producing all the outputs. So they are Professor Michael Taylor from Physics Department, Climate Studies Group, Dr. Matthew Wilson, who is the head of Department of Geography in Trinidad, and he was my principal investigator. Then we had the Jamaica Conservation and Development Trust, Dr. Nandi from Tennessee University, and Dr. David Smith from UWI Mona Institute of Sustainable Development. Okay, now I'll talk about the objective of the project before we go into the details of what I did in this 18 months project. It started in 2013 January and it ended in 2014 August, so to late September. So it was a bit over 18 months. Next slide, please. The objectives. So the main objective of the project was to provide a historic overview on the frequency and severity of flooding, to create an island-wide flood hazard map. We targeted mainly the Riverine flood hazard map. That was an additional attachment to the project. Then we chose two watersheds which are distinctly different. One, Yallahs, which I will show you in the map next, coming up, in the eastern part of the island, which is a mountainous terrain. And another was in the west, which is the Negril Orange River, and that has a beautiful 7-mile long beach. So you get two different watersheds, one river and one both river and coastal flooding. So we chose these two watersheds based on previous flood occurrences from hurricane storms. And then what we did, we created two flood hazard maps for the two watersheds. Now we created for past tropical storm Gustav, which, if I'm sure there are colleagues from Jamaica who are listening, and they would know that Gustav was a really bad tropical storm and stands out significantly in terms of the disasters and the damage and losses. Next, we chose the climate model PRECI, the regional climate model, which is being used in the Caribbean. And we got the outputs of the climate model, that is the projections for future rainfall. And we used those rainfall data into the same watershed model and created the future flood risk for these two watersheds. So it was a past, then the present current flood risk, and a future. So we have three separate maps. Also, we did some community survey to assess the knowledge, attitude, and practice in the two communities in the two watersheds to see if they are aware of climate change, flooding, what are the possible causes of flooding. And then we did it both pre and post project, and we organized workshops and as well as community meetings. And lastly, we disseminated the results through a stakeholder workshop, which some of my Jamaican colleagues attended last year in May. And we also plan to upload some of the data through a website, which I will show you at the end. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, just to give you an idea of where Jamaica is located for my colleagues out in the UK, CDKN, and for the LAC representatives, Jamaica is the third largest island in the Caribbean, and it's just south of Cuba. It's a pretty island full of beautiful beaches, but this is the hurricane season now, so I mean, we've been having droughts for the last few months, but it's I shouldn't say coincidence, because a hurricane is developing far east, and it's called Danny. We don't know whether it will come here now. So as you can see, I've put a track of Hurricane Gilbert, which was one of the, or I should say, the most damaged one prior to Hurricane Ivan in 2004. So it struck the island in 1988. And from this track, you can see that most of the hurricanes are trending along this line. So even if they don't directly hit Jamaica, we do get a significant amount of rainfall across the island, which causes damage in all the sectors: agriculture, tourism, water, food, everywhere. Next. Okay, so the main causes of flooding in Jamaica are obviously rainfall. We have flooding from high intensity rainfall. They can be associated with tropical storm or hurricane, or they come without these events. So for example, we had rains in the month of May in 2001, which caused massive flooding. Then in November 2006, we had a trough which caused widespread flooding in Port Maria in the north coast. And we also get flooding from hurricanes as well. And the other factors are topography of the place where it floods, the rock type, the lithology, and of course, urbanization. If you're building more in areas which are already flood prone, then it will aggravate the problem. Next slide. Next. Okay, so this is a compilation of all the data I got from the Met Service of Jamaica, and it's mentioned in the paper which is quoted here. It's a compilation of all the hurricanes, trough storms which affected the island from 1678 to 2011, and we can see that 43% of the events are hurricanes, and these are the ones which have causes damage both in respect of wind and water. So water will be flooding, and then other infrastructures damage as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the map on the top is a map showing the flood-prone places of Jamaica. The data was taken up, given to us by ODPM, which is the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, whereas the other data are from Water Resources and Met Service. So I tried to plot all these points and see where they fall. So we have a combination of riverine and coastal and inland flooding as well, different aspects in different parts of the island. And the graph you see on the bottom is a compilation of all the damages which happen, and we can see the green bar, that is the major damage, is to the housing or the infrastructure, green, followed by dark maroon, roads and bridges. And Gustav, tropical storm Gustav, it's 2008. Next, Nicole are the two major ones after Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Next, please. Next. Okay, so some pictures of flooding in Jamaica. I mean, the Jamaican colleagues are aware of these, but for my LAC and the UK and other people who are listening to me, this left picture on the top is a picture of tropical storm Nicole, which passed this watershed, and you can see the fording being almost washed away, half of it. Then you see the next one, Harbor View. This was damaged from tropical storm Gustav. Then Port Maria 2012 is from Hurricane Sandy, and so on, the bottom one. And the bottom left is from a trough in November 2006, November 23rd, 24th. That was from a trough, and you can see how much the flooding is in this coastal town of Port Maria. Next, please. Okay, so now the next step is to create a downscale regional climate projections and for the watersheds, and using them in the creation of the flood hazard maps for the two watersheds. Next, please. Okay, just to give you an idea of where the two watersheds are, Yallahs is on the right-hand side. It's steep, mountainous. People live down along the coast over here, and at the mouth of the river. That's where the floodplain is. And on the left is the South Negril Orange River watershed. Next, please. Next. Okay, so I'll just go briefly over it. We use two models, the HMS is the hydrological model. What it does, it takes the rainfall, soil, land use, topography, and calculates the flow at different points in the watershed. Next. And it can be downloaded freely. So you can use it if you want the software, and you can use in your country. You can. So the next is the flood hydraulic model. It was developed by Dr. Wilson and his colleagues in Bristol, and Dr. Wilson played a significant part in creating this section of the model. So it's a hybrid 2D model. It works on the DEM, and that is why the topography data is very important. And I stress it because we don't have high resolution topography data. If data is poor, then the outputs will be not very good. So you get that output topography data, you put the hydrograph or the flow data, which I get from the hydrologic model, as input, and then it works in this model and it creates the flood extent, the depth, and water, how much water accumulates. Next. Next. Okay, so just to give you, this is the topography of the Yallahs watershed, and you can see it goes from sea level, coastal level at the mouth of the river, to all the way to 2257 meters, which is a very steep gradient. So all the water which comes down from the top of the watershed flows down through a narrow channel which widens out at the mouth and floods it. Next. Next. And so now this is the result from the Gustav. So we use the rainfall data for Gustav from what data we got from Met Office for that event, for that day. It was August 2008, 28th of August. We choose the rainfall data, and then we ran it through the HMS, which you see on top is the hydrological model. And the output we get, that's the flow or the velocity of water. We feed it into the hydraulic, and then we get the area of flood inundation, and the figure or the map you see is showing up to maximum 4 meters of water, but you can see the dark blue, which is at the bottom, which is about 2 meters, is near the place where most people live. So that's where communities are living. And the width is the extent to how much it's spread. Next. Okay, so what do you get from these models? We get the time it takes to flood from the top to the bottom of the watershed, or the extent, that is how much it spreads, the depth of the inundation, or how much water will rise. And also you can calculate the rainfall return periods. This is calculated separately by using the 24-hour maximum rainfall data, and then we use those rainfall values in the model to create these 100-year or 50-year flood maps. Next. Next. Okay, so those are I will go further into the flood hazard map for Negril, and then we'll talk about the climate one. Next. Next. Yes, so this is for the current flood risk for Yallahs. The different colors are for 25, 50, and 100-year flood extent. So details of this, there are more maps, and you can get them later in the CDKN site, but I'm just going the brief. So if you see here in the map on the right, the figure, this more topographically constrained, meaning it's very narrow, steep valley, and it floods out because quickly that takes less time to come down. And we see in the green is the 25-year flood, has wider extent, so it's more you will get in short-term events than a 100-year. That is the main significance. But you do get 100-year flood going all the way down to the mouth, that is the red and the blue, which are the long-term. So you are going to get short-term events more than the long-term events. Next slide, please. Next. And just to show you that the communities are living in the downstream end of the river, and that's how floodplains have developed in the Caribbean islands. And in Jamaica, most communities are already located in the floodplains. And it started because of port and then more urbanization. So the climate model, I'm sure my Caribbean colleagues know about the Précis model. Is downscaled from the global climate model. We use the two scenarios of emission A2 and B2, and it is providing the regional forecast. Next. So just to say, this is the domain is a grid box of 50-kilometer resolution. When the project, I should say here, when the project was done, we had data for 50-kilometer only. Now we have more high resolution, 25 kilometers, so it can be refined. So we use the data for rainfall for the two boxes which are mentioned here in the right and the left, and that is used for the future models. Next. Next. Okay, so what do we see in the future? We still see that there is a greater probability of the short-term flood, that is the 25-year return period, although the future projection showing drying or less rainfall, daily rainfall, but there are still, we are getting, maybe the extent is less, but we will still get short-term floods, 25-year event happening end of century and 2050. Next, please. Next. Okay, so now the other watershed, and I won't spend much time. It's similar method used, and you can see here it's both coastal and the river, the Negril Orange River coming in from the left side of the watershed, and the sea intruding in when storm surge coming in. So we took both the data and we created this. So it's, you can see water up to 1 meter level, which is further inland. Next, please. Next. All right, so that's now the future probable map, and you see the 5, 10, 25, which are all the probabilities. So we are seeing more of short-term flooding from the, this is not the future event, this is the rainfall return period calculated from 1992 to 2010, 2012 data. The rainfall return periods were calculated, and then we use it in the left map, and the right one, or the one which says future annual exceedance, is the future climate projection data fed into it. So we are seeing more of short-term flooding, both coastal and inland. Next. Okay, this is just to show you the hazard. So was done by my colleague, Dr. Wilson. He calculated the hazard depth to velocity based on the DEFRA method, and you can see the extreme hazards are all on the red dots which are bordering the coast, and that's the 7-mile long beach. And it's very, I mean, it's widely known that these hotels, and these are all mainly hotels and other small infrastructures which are along the coast, and whenever any event happens, a storm surge, they are the ones who get the most brunt of it. Next. Okay, so the last part of the technical work, we tried to create an island-wide riverine flood hazard map. We did it with Dr. Nandi from Tennessee. She helped us a lot in this. So we use all these parameters for each point. So we got the data from water resources for all the spatial data. We got the flood data from ODPM as well as WRA and Met Service, and we quality control filtered so there's no overlap. And for each point, we extracted all these variables, the soil, land use, and we use a regression method to create an island-wide river flood. We didn't do groundwater coastal yet. This is the first attempt. Next. So this is the riverine flood hazard map. We have submitted this section of the project for publication. We are waiting on the review. So once the paper, if the paper is accepted and once it's all cleared, we will share it. And the last part was the community aspect. How does the community get affected? So we did 3 communities in the Yallahs and along the coast in Negril, and I will show you the results. Next, please. So these are the, we went to Brook Lodge, Grass Peas, and Poor Man's Corner, which is along at the mouth of the river, the purple diamond-shaped spots. And this was done by JCDT, and we interviewed about 20 to 30 people in each community. Ironically, no floods happened during the period of the study, so we couldn't immediately get any flood data. So this is the age cohort of people who we interviewed, both male and female. Next. And it shows that this is a compilation of all the results from together. The river is the main source of the flooding in Yallahs, and people do complain that rainfall river and then the drains are blocked, which is a very important thing in some sections of the island. The drains are not cleared, so it clogs up and it causes backwater and floods. And people are aware of flooding and its impact and the climate change. Some people had losses to their houses, which had to vacate, and the houses collapsed. But important thing, people don't want to move immediately, so that is a challenge. Next slide. Next. So these are some areas where, and you can see from the top, the construction is going on just across the riverbed. And if you see at the bottom, you will see it's not very clear, but when you get to the slide, there's a bridge over this river, and this river is in August last year, so it's very low, but we didn't have any significant rain causing floods. But you see these boulders coming down and the debris does cause the flooding around these areas. And this house, which is built just across the river bank. And now we are presenting the results of the study to the community members. Next. And we tried to create a last part of the project was how to give the results out to the people in Jamaica, the stakeholders. So we did workshops, television and radio, and publication. Next. Next, yeah. So we had a training. Some of you attended it. Those of the Med Service was well represented. The water resource was there, and we tried to give them a training on how to use the 2 models, the hydrologic and hydraulic model, and show them what they can do with the data if they have, and carry it back to their workspace. Next. And this is also was introduced. This is a upload of data through open source platform Cariska. You may contact my colleague, Dr. Smith, who is in the list of the project partners, and he can give you more information. We are in Jamaica developing some open source platforms to upload geodata. So there is DRIP, there is Cariska, and at the time DRIP wasn't known to us. So Cariska is open source. You get a login, you get a password, you can access certain data like buildings, watersheds, river data, houses, important infrastructure, and you can upload your data too. So if you know there's a flooding, you can take the coordinates if you are nearby, and you can ask us for a login and you can upload it. In this way, we should enrich this open source thing so that the data is accessible. Next. So there are more work to be done. That is the high resolution climate models data, and then that can be used for flood maps. We want to refine the island-wide flood hazard map. We want to do vulnerability analysis on these communities and in other communities which are affected from other types of flooding, and create a risk map. And this model, if it works well here, we can extend it to other areas in the Caribbean where you have similar topography and land use pattern and similar rainfall. So that was in short what I tried to do in this 18 months. Next. So you have some acknowledgement. All these, it wouldn't have been possible if my colleagues from Department of Geography and Water Resource didn't help me with data and advisors and all sort of information, useful information. So all these acknowledgement. And finally to CDKN and CaribSafe, without which I couldn't do this. Next. And you can, in the last slide, we have uploaded some additional resources which you can access. And as Maria said, you can get this PowerPoint later.
Okay, well, thank you, Arpita. Was very interesting presentation. As you can see here, you have additional resources. If you have a specific question about the research, you can directly contact Arpita, and also visit our CDKN project website, where you can have some of the products that this project has delivered. Also, there are some conference presentations and in the following website that we are mentioning, and this will follow up in an email after the webinar. So before you leave and we go into the presentation section, we would like to ask you whether we can add you into our email list. And for that, it would be great to have your answer. So you can vote online now, and we can have the results immediately. So I want to thank you, Arpita, and also now we are going to open the floor for questions. If people want to ask the question directly, as we are not so many people, we can do it. So you can or raise your hand from the assistant panel, or you can write the questions yourself in the question section. Okay, so I think that we have a first question here, Arpita, and we would like to ask you, which are the challenges that you faced during this research?
Okay, thank you for the question. May I know who it is, or it's not?
Yeah, you can answer directly. Yeah, you can answer to everyone.
Well, this is the, well, let me organize. This was the first time we were using climate data and in hydrology or developing an impact model, because all these years a lot of research has been done on making the climate models, but we thought, how do we use it? So we had challenges first in how to use the data. We resolved it, so that was a technical challenge. Topography data was a challenge because we did not have a lot of funding, and I understand that, to do LiDAR. So we had to do survey and rely on the DEM, and pretty much other than that, we didn't get any challenges. The data, we received the data on time, and people were cooperative in discussions, and it was pretty much straightforward. So those were the technical challenges in understanding the knowledge of how to use it, and then the topography data took a bit of time to resolve. We had to get a surveyor to survey, and then still we had to do some extra technical things in the software to adjust the elevations and data. But and one of the challenge, I should say, is not me alone, but it is for everywhere. For this kind of research and also for agencies, because of how the watersheds are and how great these storms happen, we lose the gauges. So when we lose the gauges, we lose a significant amount of rainfall, because the gauges sometimes get knocked down by the wind or too much silt come in. So we get a gap in the data. So sometimes in some cases, calibration of the models become difficult. So there has to be it is a challenge, and it is funding also to revamp these gauges and continue getting the data. So that's not my challenge alone, that's universal, that's data gets lost during these events.
Okay, great. We have a question by Sebastian Kratzer. And Sebastian, you can ask the question yourself. the sound is on, so you can ask directly what you want.
Thanks, Maria Jose. I just wanted to know if anything has been done differently by the authorities involved or by the communities as a result of the project. Have they changed their flood prevention measures or responses? Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't follow up yet with any meetings after the workshop. So as a part of the inside story, I'm going to meet with the agencies to discuss these things. So I can answer that after soon.
Okay, thank you. And we have.
I just want to mention that I think one of the participants is there are people from Ministry of Water, Environment, Climate Change, and Mr. Davis is, I suppose, there from disaster management. So if he is willing, he can give some insight on the new Disaster Management Act, which is coming up. I'm not sure if he is hearing me. I don't know. I can't see who is there.
You can see the assistants.
Oh.
You can see what the name. And until we wait for that question, we have Adrian Shaw. Also, he has 2 questions. So the floor is yours, Adrian. What are your questions?
Yeah, I know, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
Yes, good presentation, Dr. Mondal. My question is, what is the status of flood information on the Cariska open source software?
Okay. Okay, the Cariska one, some of the data on the Hope watershed I have uploaded on the watershed map and the flood locations. But when Dr. Smith comes back next week, I will send him these data so he can then upload it. Because we didn't want to release all the models until it is finally done. And I must say, we got some additional data from Met Office on the hourly data which Adrian, you provided for Gustav, if you remember. So we have refined it and we will send it to Dr. Smith to upload it through Cariska. And then you can actually email Dr. Smith to get a login and a password so you can download it.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, Dr. Mondal, is we have a problem of not being able to measure the flood, take flood measurements for areas in case of riverine flooding and storm surge flooding. There are no markers in terms of no tide stuff in certain locations. So are there any plans to put those in place so we can further estimate, validate the models?
Well, we don't have budgeting to set up gauges, but
no, not gauges. Tide stuff like a marker for different areas. We want to put in markers.
That was what can I say? That was a bit of a. If we get some more additional little bit, we can say funding. We can set up some signs like some gauges on the riverside. But my first attempt now is to get, if a flood happened now, is to get data immediately day after. But I'm trying to go in the field again to get some watermarks from whatever existing remnants remain from trees or meeting, and then I try to create a map with watermarks, and I guess that will be the best we can do now with limited sources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
So that's the plan, to go in the field in September to collect more watermark data.
Okay, we have a question by Raquel Jimenez. I think it has been answered somehow, but I will give the floor to her so she can ask you directly. Raquel, the floor is yours.
Hi, Arpita. Well, my question is more or less the same as the first question, and it's how successful has been the use of the results of your research for the stakeholders. I mean, the use of this data to policy-making process.
Okay, so that question is very important. The stakeholders are, I guess, here. Some of them. Adrian is here. I'm not sure if others are there. Well, I don't know. I mean, I didn't follow up with a meeting after that. So honestly, that's the thing. So I need to catch up on that to see how they are. But I know the new Disaster Management Act or the policies are coming up and they are incorporating climate information in it. So that much I know. Whether specifically my Yallahs, I mean the Yallahs and Negril have been done, I have not followed up. So I will do it because that's a part of the next work we are doing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Raquel. And we have Otis here as well. He has 2 comments, so the floor is yours.
Yes, Otis.
Yeah. Hi, good morning,
Hi.
Dr. Mandel.
Yes.
I am here at the 5Cs with 4 other colleagues.
Oh no.
So we have been listening attentively to your presentation.
Good. Thank you.
We had typed in a question earlier, but I will reiterate it now. And the question had to do with the fact that you had stated, well, we have about 3 questions, so I'll state them and then you can respond.
Sure.
You had indicated that you used 2 emission scenarios, A1 and the B2 scenarios.
A2, B2.
And we were just wondering whether or not, well, what were the justification for using those 2 scenarios, and secondly, why wasn't, say, a scenario such as the A1B scenario used?
No, okay.
That might have provided some level of a better medium representation.
Okay. The thing is, we have tried. We got data for A1, A2, B1, B2, all of them. So that was, as you are aware, with the climate Tracy model. So we got those rainfall future data from CSGM, that's the Climate Studies Group. But for here, I mean, we've used both A2, B2, and A1. But the time was a bit constrained when to finish up all, and I haven't shown all of them here. But in the original FAT report, there are all the maps are there, so I can get them.
Okay, great. I had to mute Otis because of the background noise, but the comment that he has also, he would like to have the audio available for the 5Cs, and I remind you that this recording will be in the CDKN YouTube channel, so you can access that and share with other people as well. We have also Orville who wants to say something, so the floor is yours.
Yes, Orville.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can.
Oh, I was asking the question, just following up on the question asked by the 5Cs. Noting the reference to the scenarios, that's the old family scenarios.
Exactly.
Just wondering why no reference to the new scenarios, the RCPs?
Because
many persons have moved beyond the old family in terms of difficulty.
Exactly. Okay, so as I said, when the project started in 2013 and when we got the funding, that was what was available from CSGM. So there is no harm in carrying on this, and that will be our own research interest, and we are doing it. We will get the 25-kilometer data from CSGM, and if the RCPs are available, I'm sure you're referencing to the RCPs. Orville?
Yes, sorry, he was mute. Okay, Orville he can reply now.
Are you referring to the RCPs?
Yes, he's referencing to that.
Okay, so well, we have, as I said, the project finished because the funding finished. So now we have to do our own research interest research work to carry on with the new model, new projection. So I will definitely take it account, and I will ask CSGM for the new RCP data, and when they give me, we can run it again. So to be frank, That was the 18 months we got those data. So
Okay, great. Thank you, Orvin.
we have to keep,
We have
yeah.
the hand. Otis wants to say something else, so the floor is yours.
Okay.
Or maybe he already, yeah, or maybe he already said it.
All right,
Otis?
sorry, you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, in the results that was presented by Peter also, two things came out there. One, the whole issue of not maintaining drains appropriately. So solid waste disposal becomes an issue of concern. And also, based on some of the findings, building in vulnerable zones in terms of people already, actually going about building in vulnerable zones seem to be two of the major points being reflected here. Now, my question now in relation to that is, how closely will this information be communicated or be used with, let's say, the solid waste management department within the country, and also, say, the physical planning department that deals with the whole issue of building and building codes and guidelines and legislation in terms of ensuring that people do not continuously go into vulnerable zones and continue to put down these sort of infrastructure that is going to cause us problems down the road in terms of these flooding events. So, I just wanted to know what is the probably level of collaboration that is taking place with respect to these areas.
Well, Otis, it's a very useful question, and it's a very useful question. No matter how much talk about drains first. There is a place in Jamaica called Port Maria, and it's a town which floods often. We made a presentation to the mayor, me and the students who were working, and we told the drains need to be cleaned. Now, people, the NWA or the agencies, they are aware of it. Now, I cannot push them to clean it immediately. So it is up to, I am sure they know about this factor. And then building on vulnerable zones. We need a strong building code to be enforced, not that which is, yes, policies happen. I write a policy, it go to the agency, it go to upper level, and it sit there. But there is no strict building code enforced. People still live in the same Hope River Valley where the bridge is fallen off. People still live there. So, well, the ODPM director is here. I guess if he can give you any information on the building code, if it is passed, it was supposed to be passed in the last year. That's what I gathered, but I'm not sure. If Orville is there, he can give any information on whether it is enforced. But these slides, these presentations have been shared, so there's no question of not sharing. But yes, there is no strict enforcement that do not build on 10 meters from the river or 5 meters from the river. It has to be done. Otherwise, no matter how much you fund or how much you do research, nothing will change.
Okay, well, I think that was a very useful comment, Arpita. Something that we need to work more, and certainly with the CDKN team, we can try to make this happen, is that the project results, mainly coming from a research project that can be sometimes very technical, needs to go to the decision-making sector and to make that information available and understandable so future policies and different plans can take that information that came from the research into account.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think that we don't have any more questions, I think. So anyone who would like to know more about this project can contact Dr. Arpita, and here I think I have I will give you the floor to Otis for a few seconds more because he's eager to answer some of the questions that we raised. So Otis, the floor is yours for a brief moment.
Yeah, just wanted to follow up from what Peter said, that I know that in terms of with the agencies, you really can't push them to do what is necessary and needed. However, one of the approach I think you probably might want to do, Peter, and maybe CDKN, maybe, and I'm throwing this out to CDKN as a challenge now, to maybe help fund maybe a component where you go into these communities and you provide them with a lot of knowledge and information about these issues, and let the community be the driving force to go to these agencies to get them to do the necessary work that is required in terms of ensuring that their drains are maintained and these sort of things. Because it is the people who is going to drive the change with respect to these agencies, and not just necessarily a piece of paper or a piece of document that speaks towards policy issues and things that need to be done.
Okay, thank you, Otis, for your comment. Very useful. Okay, I think that so the next stage, I think, Arpita, is related also with how to reach the communities and engage them more in these results, and also inform in different ways to the policymakers. So watch this space. Okay, everyone, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to especially to thank Arpita for her time on the presentation. Do you want to add anything else?
No, that I mean I'm fine, and I'm thankful for CDKN and all, and the people from 5Cs and Orville and all of the agencies made time out of their work schedule to come and listen, because it is really important. Most times what happens, and I can say frankly that academics and agencies, there is a gap. It happens in many places. Sometimes we don't release the data. We want to wait till we publish because that is for our benefit. So the research needs to be mixed with the agencies to meet. There needs to be more, and it's happening, and I personally experienced, I got information, they came out, and so there needs to be more of this linkage, because what we do is more technical. I'm not expert in policies and drafting policies, and my background is not that. So I can give the information, and then we need to discuss on how to make it happen. But I seriously would like that the building code is enforced, because we are probably going to get another hurricane. We may not, but it's forming, and I can say that some of the places are going to get affected again. So it has to be strict from in future. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Arpita, and thank you all. Bye.
Bye.